All right, everybody, the next step is to install the camshafts, intake and exhaust, back into the cylinder head. Now I poured a little bit of oil on the valves, and that's just going to drain back down. Obviously, I'm going to be doing an oil change before I start this up and do a bleed procedure, but that's just to throw some lubrication on there for when we put those rails back on. And I have everything here set up. Here's my lifters, technically, right? This is the rail that holds them. This is actually like the tappet style lifter right here. You want to make sure that none of them are binding before you go back on. And then you have this tool right here, which is this is a magnet, and it holds the lifters in place. I didn't have this before when I took them off, so they all kind of fell in. But this is how you're going to install it. Now, there is an exhaust and an intake side to this, so you don't want to mix them up. To make sure that you're installing the right one, if you check this holder, there's going to be an E for ein for intake, and then this one and this rail has an A for aus. Aus is out, ein is in, so the A is your exhaust carrier. So I'm going to put the exhaust one in first. Take note that there are guide pins down the bottom here, and there's one there, and there's one there for with the intake. And we're going to go ahead and drop this on, line that up, and drop that right down. It's as easy as that. You want to make sure that you're fully seated. You should feel it really go into those guide pins. You can check to see if you're flush, and that feels good. So once you're all the way down, you can take these off now. You can feel the valves moving. Now I need to put this on the other guide rail. Now here's the intake. Oop, not that way. Turn it this way right here, or else it'll slide out on me. Oop, lost one. And just slide that back in. And then I'm going to take the tool and just clip it on. Which these are pretty cool. We used to have suction cups. And this cool tool that you can purchase pretty cheap has two little magnets, and basically it goes right across the bearing and holds these in place for you so they don't fall out. As simple as that. Alright, so we're going to put the intake carrier on now. That was a nice solid click there. Yep, I like it. And there are oil ports on the bottom of this, so you got to make sure that this is fully seated. Obviously with the camshaft pressure and then the bearing caps, there should be really good positive pressure. Okay, can take these off, and they stick together like that. That's actually how it came. And you know, if you're confused on how it works, you have to separate them. There we go. So just like the carriers on the intake cams, there's also an E and an A. This is E for ein or in. I am going to take some of this assembly lube, and I'm going to put it on all the bearing and just kind of squish it in on all the contacts. So I'm going to run this on and then just use my hands to lubricate everything before I pop it on. This is some nice thick stuff. Help give it some lubrication for that startup. I'm going to just want to get this all over for when we're ready to go. Just going to give it a little extra lubrication. Don't have to be neat about it. Just got to make sure I got some in here. All right, so all my bearing surfaces you can put on top of the lifters. But really the bearing surfaces are important. I've had the engine apart for a while, so just want to make sure everything has some lubricant on it. Alright, so I'm just going to rest this in here for now. like so. Now you want your cam lobes, and I'll move the camera so you can see, facing towards each other like this when you're doing the install. Right? That's going to be close to the timing. And I have the pistons at a neutral state. I back the engine off so that I'm not at top dead center, because when I compress these, the valves will open slightly. But the location that you want to be in is pointing at that angle like this right here. Just going to run a bead on this too. Go ahead and squish that all in. This is just Permatex Ultra Slick engine assembly lube, 81950. All right, A for Alice. Same thing. My lobes are going to face the other lobe towards the center. Right about there. Now, when I compress this and put the bearing caps on, I can manually turn these cams right here in the center just using an open-end wrench. So I can position them, and I'm going to have to set my timing in the right spot using this right here, and then drop the timing tools on, and then I'm going to want to put the car at TDC. Alright, continuing, if you hear that in the background, I turned the heat on in the shop, in the garage, because it's a little chilly today. Now, all of your bearing caps also are labeled E1, E2, all the way up to E7. E, remember, is ein for intake. Same thing, I'm going to want to take a little bit of assembly lube, put on your finger, and lube the bearing surface before I go ahead and install it. E1, obviously, is going to go right here. So I'm just going to get those all in place as best I can. And the cam kind of falls into place when you do that. E2. Okay, you can see my cam right here is facing towards the center. Now normally if I was doing a cylinder head and it's not apart for a long period of time, you just use engine oil and you're good to go. But since I've had this apart for a while, just due to time constraints and family stuff, I'm going to throw a little bit of assembly lube on here as I'm going back together for that added insurance. Now the letter goes towards the passenger side, so as I'm looking at it, not as the driver's side. So E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, E6, and E7 in place. And now I'm going to do exhaust side. So I put everything in bags to keep everything together and to keep it clean. And everything stayed nice in here. A5, A7. Just gonna lay them out. 3, 4, 2, 1, and this has to be 6. Alright, ready for the next step. And yes, Zion is helping. Yeah, right? Good boy. Now if you're going to install this camshaft and you don't have this special tool, you're going to want to start where you can and just slowly bring it down, and it's going to eventually, you'll be able to see the threads show up over here as you slowly bring this down, add your screws, and just do, you know, half a turn, 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 half, and continue until you draw it down together, because you can actually crack your camshaft if you don't do that. I do have the special tool, which sits in the center here, and then the hole down goes into the spark plug holes, and I will be able to pressurize this one shot and then go ahead and install the bearing caps correctly. Now on this tool, it does have a cam on it, so slowly bring it around and it will self-lock at the top point right there. And now I have access to all of my studs for me to go ahead and put on the nuts. So I'm going to install all of these on, and then we will do a torque procedure for the intake side, and then we'll switch to the other side. So let me get all those on and then we'll continue. Alright everybody, here's an important step. So on the tightening torques for the bearing caps, it depends on what size stud you have, depends on how you torque it. And here's the specs right here. So if you have an M6, it's 10, M7, 14, M7 to 8.8, it says 15, and M8 is 20, and M10, 65, that's probably something else. So what does that mean, M6, M7, M8? That is basically in millimeters. So this is a 7mm wrench. You take your wrench and you go around your stud, and if you have 0 movement, then that's the right size. So the 7 fits over this. I have a 7. So this is an M7. So my torque spec on this M54 is 14 Newton meters. Hey Zion, I need an 11 socket, okay? Oh, thanks, hey, perfect. Alright, so we're going to set our torque wrench for 14 Newton meters. Realistically, because I have full pressure on my camshaft, I can just go from beginning to end. Otherwise, you're going to want to walk it down slowly until the camshaft is fully seated, and then do a tightening torque at the end. And obviously, I would go and work your way out. Now, this is sometimes where you can have a problem as well. If the cylinder got overheated, sometimes these studs will strip and they won't take the torque. If that's the case, then you will have to replace these studs as well. 14. So hopefully we will be lucky here. And most of the time I want to say that these do not strip out. Of course I just said that, right? Which means I'm gonna have one that fails. But that's it right there. If you were gonna have a problem, most of the heat ends up being towards the middle and back. Probably not with the front ones. So I'm gonna do the rest of these to 14 Newton meters, and I'll let you guys know if I have any problems. All right, excellent. So that took 14 Newton meters, no problem. I'm gonna go ahead and back this off, and that releases the tension. I'm gonna go ahead and take the tool off. There we go. And with the tool off, I'm gonna just go ahead and double check. So I'll do a second check. All of these should be at 14. I'm gonna start from the center and kind of crisscross. All right, that's 1, 2, I'm gonna do 3. And then go back. That one took a little bit. I did that one. Just always a good idea just to go over them again. 2 back ones. And lastly, the front bearing here. Bearing cap. Alright, now I'm going to repeat for the exhaust side. Turn the tool around. Drop that on. Just go into the spark plug holes. Same thing, I'm going to want to apply pressure. And I'm going to go nice and easy. See if I can get my camshaft in the position I want it to be in. And if something doesn't feel right, then you stop. Okay, that felt good. That's my max. Make sure all my bearing caps are all the way down. Now my cam is facing not really where I want it to be, which is probably fine right now, but I can, in essence, if I have the right size, I could turn that from that spot right there. 15/16 works. So I want to bring, if I can get in here, I want to bring my cam up a little bit. I can sneak in here to a certain degree. Now I already got that cam in a little better position. I could realistically do this after. The idea was I just wanted to make sure that no valves are touching. That's pretty good. And I'll move those over to the timing position using this tool on the camshaft right here after I put the bearing caps in. After I torque down the bearing caps and I take the tool out, I'll be able to turn it with a wrench. All right, I'm going to carefully put all of the nuts on so I don't drop anything in the engine. And I'm going to torque these also to 14 Newton meters. All right, all my nuts are on, and I'm going to go ahead and torque these down to 14 Newton meters. And I'm going to do those. I'll let you guys know if I have a problem. All right, all torqued. A couple words of caution. You know, when you're working with that tool, it is hard to get to these bottom ones. So I just gently torqued it, then removed the tool. And then even if you have a swivel and an extension, your torque can be off. So I went to the smallest bit of extension, actually this back one, right with the socket, and I was able to get 14 Newton meters, no problem. If I would have left the extension, just the angle of the extension could have caused that to over torque. So just a little side note for that. All right, at this point, I don't have the engine at top dead center, but I can use my 15/16 wrench and I can move my camshafts now that I have that tool out. And you want to be gentle. If I felt something odd, I would stop because the valves are open. But remember, I'm not at top dead center in any one of these. I backed it off just to make sure that I had enough space for the valves for moving the camshafts. So now at this point, I'm going to want to go ahead and install my timing tools to set up for timing. Again, I'm not at TDC yet. Realistically, kind of a fun little trick is if you put this back here and you can get it on, sometimes you can use the tool to kind of move the camshaft into the position you want to. Of course, it doesn't want to move right now, so you know what? I'm going to use the wrench so I can get that to drop down correctly. All right. So there we go. That's ready on the intake side. And then on my exhaust side, same thing. Again, sometimes you can actually use the tool. The exhaust side was easier. And make sure that stays. Snug that down. Snug that down. And this is where I'm going to want to be. So my A, Aus, Ein, E, facing up. My lobes are facing each other. And now I'm going to rotate the engine clockwise and get my pin in. And then I'll be ready to start setting up for my timing for my Vanos. So remember, this is a 22 for the central bolt. My pin hole is over here, but I don't have my pin in. You know what you want to do is you want to make sure to lube the head. There we go, a little bit of white lithium grease on that. And if you've been following me, you know that the timing hole is under the starter. So I'm going to put that tool down there, and I'm not going to show you because I'm sure you can find it. I'm going to slide that in, and then I'm going to slowly turn the engine over until I drop into the right hole. I got my zip tie in cylinder 1, but you should not be able to turn the engine over. Yeah, see, it's still coming up. I think I'm getting caught on the flywheel. I need to come up more, so I need to come back out a little bit with the pin. There she is. Yep. That was very solid sounding, and I should not be able to go forward or back. Solid there. and solid there. Okay. Kind of go in the in-between area. And now I'm ready to set up for my Vanos. All right, now when I'm wrapping something like this up for the day, normally when I had everything apart, I just threw a blanket over it so no debris that might be flying through the air or get kicked up and fall into the engine, just to prevent that. You know, any rodents, you don't want them to fall inside if you had everything apart. I'm gonna, in this case, because everything is lubricated, I like to use just a plastic garbage bag, and then I will cover everything with a garbage bag like so, and then go ahead and put my blanket over the top to keep everything as clean as possible, minus the occasional Zion here, which I already took like 3 or 4 out of the engine, but hey, I'm not giving up Zion.